Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. This week we're going to be taking the Hercules Hobbies Reefer from a generic white box to something with a little colour and detail. So here we have the trailer as we completed it in the last video. We now know everything fits perfectly and works nicely, so now we can go and take off all the bits that we want to paint. Now we could go through everything in a video, but since we only just finished building it, we already know how it goes together. It's one of the great things about building a kit. Because you built it, you know how to take it apart again. With an RTR, sure, you can have at it and take things apart, but there's always little surprises, and a lot of them don't even have an exploded view in the manual anymore. The main thing to do when stripping a model down is to keep all the screws and small parts together. All the assemblies get their own little pudding pot, so the toolbox gets one, the tyre rack, end panels, and there's probably going to be a couple more too. These are all the major bits that need painting. There's all the large acrylic panels too, of course, but these are all the fun bits. There's a number of decals they want us to fit too, but they're lights, so decals don't really do the trick. On the toolbox doors there's two rectangular recesses, so we can fit lights later. We're going to need to cut them out before we paint them. To make up the lights we're going to use some 5mm acrylic to make some light pipes for the LEDs, but we'll get on with that when we do the rest of the lights. For painting, first all the parts need a good wash with some soapy water, and then thoroughly rinsed and dried. Next all the bits need to get tacked down to a piece of nice stiff cardboard. A ball of blue tack on the mounting post usually does the trick. It keeps all the parts just away from the cardboard and stops them all from falling off. Some bits need a bit more creativity. The rear bumper needs to be painted on both sides, so we can put it across the corner for access. The light buckets need to be masked off too. They're not chrome, but white's going to work a lot better than the black for lights. The easiest way to seal them off is a bit more blue tack. You can ball it up and squash it all out to the edges. That's the first lot of bits. There's another bit of cardboard with the toolbox parts. Before we get to the colour though, everything's going to need some primer. As usual, I'm using Halford's cans, starting with plastic primer. Let it dry and we can start with some colour. I've painted the vertical bars blue to match the truck. There's not much need for a mask for that, however, for the next step there is. I've already painted the inside of the toolbox matte black, so we need to mask that off too. We need to block up all the holes and go around the edge so we end up with a nice crisp edge to the colour. The bars on the bumper are a little tricky to do. A nice masking tape is a huge advantage though. I use the Tamiya stuff anywhere there's an edge. It always works a treat. On the inside of the doors you can see where I've used some really cheap masking tape to fill in the gap in the middle. While they're being painted we can add some more details to the fridge, which is now painted appliance white. It looks pretty good, but to make it look a little bit sharper I think we need to pick out the panel lines. We could use some paint, but it's going to be easier to use some Model Technics trim line. It's basically thin vinyl strips in different widths. Very handy and available from most UK model shops. All we do is carefully lay the appropriate size in the recess between the panels. So they don't peel away, we need to have a good bit of extra to wrap around the back. Pretty snazzy I think, but before the clear coat we need to paint the door handle black too. It's already quite shiny, and that's just the paint. The doors and bumpers are ready for the masking to come off now. It should peel off quite cleanly. Here we are then, everything's been painted up and has a few coats of clear. The blue tack in the light buckets can come out now too, leaving a nice white light bucket. The good thing is, if you mix up the blue tack between your fingers, it's reusable for many times. Okay, decals next. The kit comes with a really good selection. There's the control panel, and the main one for the fridge, the logo. It says Fridge L980. It's a nice enough decal, but it should really say Thermo King. But as you might expect, there is of course someone who sells custom scale ones. He's in Slovakia, but shipping to the UK is nice and quick and the quality is great. I'll stick a link to his eBay store in the description. All we do is cut them out of the sheet, peel off some of the backing and stick them in place. Couldn't be easier. Looking at a picture of the real unit, they also tend to have the Thermo King square logo under the top one, so we can pop one of them on too. They really do add to the look of the unit. Last bit for the fridge then, we need to reinstall the vents, and because we've got all the screws neatly separated, it's really quick and easy to pop them in and install the screws. Looks quite good I think. A little extra time spent on the detail really does add up. There's a decal to fit to the rear bumper next. It's a bit of diamond plate that goes on the step. It might be nice to get a proper sheet of scale diamond plate, but for now the decal will do the job. I've also swapped out the silver Hercules Hobby screws for some black Tamiya ones I had spare. They should stick out a lot less now the plastic's painted black. The light lenses have little tabs on the sides that clip into the bumper. You have to be a bit careful to get them in straight or they'll get stuck before they're all the way in. To make sure they don't fall out, we can use a couple of drops of poly cement on the back where the tabs poke through. They don't need a lot, just a tiny spot on each one. There's the cover boxes that go on the back too, but we might as well let the glue dry a bit before we refit them. The rest of the assembly is exactly the same as the initial build. The doors go on the toolbox so it's ready to fit, and the fridge goes back on the end panel. The only thing that's different is you have to be a bit more careful not to slip with a screwdriver and scratch the paint. The boxes can go back on the bumper now, the lenses have had a few minutes to dry. 3 of the 2mm self-tappers on each side. Everything can be fitted to the chassis. It's all exactly the same as the build. A couple of screws have been swapped for black ones, but that's the only change. Now, what I haven't recorded is prepping and painting the large plastic panels. There's quite a lot to take apart, as you can probably imagine. The acrylic needs a bit more careful preparation too. I wet sanded it with, I think, 400 grit wet and dry with some soapy water. It's quite a messy process, the goal being to have a nice even matte finish across the outside of the panel. If you just prime and paint, it will probably flake off when the panels flex, especially if you've left any grease or oils. After the surface prep, it's just a case of rinsing, drying, priming, painting and some clear coat. There's more you can do to get it really shiny of course, but I'm hoping to have some custom stuff made for the sides, so I don't really want to get too far ahead of myself. So here we are then, the reveal. As you can see, it's very blue at the moment, but it's another step along the way. It's slowly coming together. While it's in bits, I adjusted the trigger for the mechanical legs too. I adjusted the push rod so it's only just triggering when the coupling is all but fully engaged. It seems to help quite a bit. It still needs a bit of a shove, but it's a lot smoother than it was before. Just like last time, I'll stick a link to a longer 50 frames per second video of the model running around in the car park. I'm not too sure what we're going to do next week. I've got the electric retract kit from Tamiya, so we might have a go at fitting that. Should be fun. Oh, and while we're still here, my email spam filter has been eating all my YouTube notifications again. I was thinking the amount of comments had really tanked. Turns out I should really be checking my YouTube dashboard page more often, so sorry if I haven't replied to you. Right, that's it for now though, so as always, thanks for watching, like if you liked, subscribe if you want to know when the next video goes up, and of course, if you've got something to say, leave a comment. Bye guys.